Hi, my name is Maisha and welcome to my YouTube channel, my booktube. This is going to be my first video, which is going to be a reading wrap up for the year for 2024. I read about 39 books so far. I'm going to have read 40 by the new year because I'm reading my last one for my book club this week and I have like less than 100 pages. So I'll just go through my reading for the year. This was not a great year for me for reading because I just took a lot of recommendations off of social media, and you can tell in the books that I've read, and I did not enjoy a lot of them. Like, I learned something, which is like I gotta get back to the basics of like going to the bookstore and reading the back of a book and like spending a little bit of time with the book before I decide to read it, because a lot of these I kind of like blindly listen to people and I didn't really enjoy it, which is why I'm making a booktube, because I'm just like, maybe I have a different reading taste, and maybe there's other people with us reading taste like me, and I want to kind of find my people. So this is my attempt to find my people. I kind of wanted to go via genre, but just full transparency, I tried to film this video and everything went wrong, and I went via genre and I just kept leaving books out. So I'm just gonna go based on the books I read from the beginning of the year to now, and hopefully I won't forget any books, because yeah, what was the point of a reading wrap up if I'm forgetting all my books? So let's get into it. First book of the year, we started off strong with 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. I gave this book 5 stars. Loved it. I love Tia Williams. I love the trauma. I'm sorry, everybody's like, oh, it's a trauma bond. It's a trauma bond, but it's a bond. It's a bond though. It's still a bond. And I really enjoyed that book. I'm not even a big second chance lovers girl. This book was so good. Like, I enjoyed myself throughout the entire book. I love it. Me and Tia Williams, we see eye to eye, so 5 stars. Next book was The Coworker by Freida McFadden. It was just something to read. 2 stars. I don't even barely remember the book. I just remember that there was like a coworker that had gone missing, and yeah, it was an okay book. The next book I read was A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas, which is the second book in the ACOTAR series. Love this book, 5 stars. I'm sorry. I enjoyed this book. I went to bed every night. I think I read this book for like, it only took me like 3 or 4 days. And every night I went to bed like thinking that I was in the night court. Yep. I literally had the YouTube like night court like ambiance on while I was reading this book. I enjoyed every second of it. It was so good. Next, Never Lie by Freida McFadden. Okay, not nothing to write home about. It was okay. I gave it 3 stars. Barely can remember it. It was something about a house or something like that. I don't even remember the book that well. It was okay. Next, I read The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. Everybody was trying, again, this just tells you, I was on TikTok, I was on YouTube, I was like reading the things the people were telling you to read, and I did not enjoy this book. Like, this book was a 3 star for me because, I mean, it was interesting, but it was nothing that I was like, oh my God, I can't believe what I just read. Like, no. Next was The Perfect Marriage by Jeneva Rose. I enjoyed myself with that thriller. I gave it a 3 star. The twist was twisting. The twist, okay? The twist kind of twisted me. The next book was None of This Is True by Jewell. Again, like she was on YouTube. I'm sorry, like all my books are just like the typical YouTube books, and this was okay. I gave it a 4 star. I think I was feeling generous at the time just because it was like so different, like the way that it was written. It was like podcast style, and I think I was riding high off of that. I think if I were to revisit this would be 3 stars, because I don't even want to say why, because I feel like it's a spoiler, but like there's an element of this book that I'm just like, so what was the purpose of the book? Yeah, we'll leave it at that. Next book was Only for the Weak by Natasha Bishop. Hated this book. And this also taught me, this was one of the books that I'll talk about that I'm just like, I'm really not going to read much romance next year. It's like my really my second genre that I got into. Like when I was a kid, I would read a lot of fantasy. Then I got into romance. Then I got into other stuff. But romance these days is not romance. This was like a situationship, friends with benefits to lovers. It was really weird. It was very smutty. It was like no character development. I felt nothing for this main male character. I didn't like it. Next. Book Lovers by Emily Henry. I gave it 5 stars, and a lot of people don't like that one by Emily Henry. I love this book. I had a time. I love the main female character. She was so different. She was like, I think she was tall too. I'm tall. So I really related to her. And she was also like kind of fabulous, like just very city girl. And I really liked that about her. And I thought that the book was really good. I sobbed at the end. I sobbed. I don't know if I was just in a sensitive mood or what. I have a sister. I sobbed at the end. I thought, it got me. Next was One of Us is Dead by Jeneva Rose. I like this book. I liked it. It was so good. It was messy. I love a messy book. I'm adding that to 2025. I want to read more messy books like this. It was like Real Housewives style. And I enjoy Real Housewives, so why would I not enjoy this book? So I really like that. I gave that book a 4-star. Next book was A Love Song for Ricki Wilde by Tia Williams. Love this book. It was kind of like Fated Mates, Insta Love, lots of magical realism, historical fiction. It was so genre bending. Not tropey at all. It was just so beautiful. The cover of this book is beautiful. I've given away my hard copy, but I'm gonna buy it again. So good. I love Tia Williams. She gives me hope in the romance genre, but she's one of the few people that does. So yeah. And then next was The Housemaid by Freida McFadden. Enjoyed myself. I think I rated this on Goodreads as a 5-star. But that was just because I was riding high in the moment. I would probably revisit this and give it a 4-star, but I had a good time. I remember I read that in one day. I literally had popcorn. Like, it's a popcorn thriller. I literally sat on my couch with popcorn and my little Kindle clicker that lets me go through the pages and just read it like that and just had a time. Next, my book club forced me to read Did You Hear About Kitty Karr by Crystal Smith Paul. I wanted to DNF this book with all of my might. There is no part of me that enjoyed this book. Like, it was painful to get through. It's just, and it's so funny because I love historical fiction. I'm not a big fan of the subject of like passing, because I think that it kind of waters down a lot of our, African-American history into being so focused on this idea of passing. So I'm like not really into those types of stories anyway, but it just wasn't well written. And I think this is a debut novel, and it definitely read as a debut novel. I gave that book 2 stars. No. Next, I read The Teacher by Freida McFadden, which was okay. I gave it 3 stars. It was okay. It was not terrible. And her books are so fast that it's also like, you're not going to feel pain throughout the book because you can read it in like a day. Because she literally writes her books for like 5-year-olds. Like, there's no big words. There's no, crazy sentences. You're going to read it in a day. Next was This Close to Okay by Leesa Cross Smith. I will be reading the next book this lady puts out, because when I tell you, this book had me thinking. I hated every single thing that this main character did. This book is about a lady who happens to be a therapist, and she's driving one night and she sees a man about to jump off of a bridge, and she meets the man, and they, meet each other and, start having not a romantic relationship, but a platonic relationship with like sprinkles of could there be romance in there. And it just brings you along their journey. Everything that they did to me felt so wrong. I was literally yelling at my book. So I didn't rate this book because I'm like, who am I to rate this book? Like it was a story that needed to be told, but also like it was just different. I made my mom read that book after I read it. I was like, you gotta read this book. And she read it too, and she was like, I don't know how to feel. I'm like, I don't know how to feel either. So good book. Next was Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. 5 stars. This gives me hope in romance and books because I really, really enjoyed this book. It was beautiful. There's just quotes on quotes on quotes of this book that just are deeply buried in my brain. Like, yeah. This is about it's historical fantasy fiction about a writer that her brother goes off to war and things start happening, and basically her journey through that and a magical typewriter. And that's all I'm gonna say about this, but this has a real love story in it that I'm just like, I was left without words after this book. I was like, this book knocked my socks off, literally. Next was That's Not My Name by Megan Lally. This was just a little palette cleanser. I think this was a YA. Yeah, this was YA because this was like literal children trying to figure out a mystery, and they were like playing detective. It was interesting. I think I gave it 3 stars. Oh, I gave it 4 stars. So apparently it was pretty good. That's Not My Name by Megan Lally. Next was All I've Wanted, All I've Needed by A.E. Valdez. I will not be reading another one of her books for a while. If I do, this again was one of the books that I was like, yeah, I don't like romance genre. It was very odd. It just lacks complexity. Didn't like it. I gave this book a 3 stars. That was a generous 3 stars. Next, I read Home is Where the Bodies Are by Jeneva Rose. That book was my least favorite Jeneva Rose that I've read all year. Was not a huge fan, so I think I gave that one 3 stars, a generous 3 stars. It was okay. Next, I read Pretty Girls by Karin Slaughter, and I was so ready to be just like disturbed. Everybody's like, this is the most disturbing book ever. Like, how can people get through this easily? I was not that disturbed by the book. In fact, I was not that entertained by the book as well. Like, it was long. I remember this book being extremely long, and I read this for my book club, and there was good discourse that came out of it, but overall, it was just okay. So I gave that a 3 star. Next, I read Magnolia Parks. Again, why am I listening to YouTube and TikTok and Instagram? Because people hype this book up so much, or hype this series up so much, and these characters are just okay. Like, it was nothing, like, there was a messiness to it, but it was also so drawn out that I was just like, am I having fun with this, or am I just getting through it to try to get to the good part? And life is too short for that. So I don't know. I'm like 56% into Daisy Hates, and I don't know if I'm gonna DNF it or not, because like I'm not feeling anything towards this, to be honest. I gave that one a 4 star, and I think that's because it ended with a lot more drama than was in the middle of the book. Like, yeah, it was just okay. That was a very generous 4 star. Next, I have Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. I wasn't sure about this book because there is a lot of science talk. This is a sci-fi book about a guy who wakes up in a space shuttle, and he's not sure how he got that. He has amnesia. and he's trying to figure out why is he on the space shuttle and how can he not be on the space shuttle anymore. Like, what is he supposed to do? This book was very heartwarming. It was interesting. It was heartwarming. They're going to make it into a movie. I will definitely be watching the movie. It was a pretty good book. I gave it a 4-star. Next was The Serpent and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent. Thing about me, I love a vampire fantasy. I don't know what it is. I love that they're like almost human. I think that that's what it is. They're almost human. You don't really have to explain much to me because like I know what a vampire is. So you can kind of get to the meat of the story a little bit faster than you can with some of these other fantasy books. And I love this main female character. She was a hoot. She was just like so strong. I loved it. What I didn't love was the trials. I'm not a trial girl. It feels like you're just doing the same day over and over again. Like there was a point in this book where I almost DNF'd it because I was like, nothing is happening. They're just doing trials and trials and trials. But the banter was great. The main female character was great. Next was, oh, and I gave that book a 3 stars because like I said, them trials were just tearing me up. I was over it. Next was Do What Godmother Says by L.S. Stratton. I actually audiobooked this book. I read this book on audiobook on Libby, but it was so good that I had to go support the author. So I went to Barnes & Noble just to buy the physical book so I can remember that I read it and have it on my bookshelf. This book was so good. It's about a young Black girl who inherits a piece of art from her grandmother, which we later find out is worth something. And it's worth a lot of something because people start acting very weird with her over this piece of art. I thought it was a beautiful story. It was so interesting that they did this with a thriller and like had something to say. Like, how often do you read a thriller that has something to say? Very rarely. I love this book. L.S. Stratton, I'll read whatever she puts out next. Next was Aphrodite and the Duke. This is a historical fiction romance. I thought that this was very cute. I'm into this whole like Bridgerton style of books. This is by J.J. McAvoy. We'll definitely be staying in this world. I'm reading the second book right now, which is her sister. And the sister is fun. The sister's actually more fun than Aphrodite, I'm not even gonna lie. The sister got some wit to her, some sass to her. So yeah. This one I gave 3 stars because the second part of this book is not about romance and it's not about anything that I was personally interested in. I could care less, so that's why I knocked it down to 3 stars. But it's a great book, great series. Next was Listen for the Lie by Amy Tintera. This was another podcast style thriller. It was good. It was okay for a thriller. 3 stars. It was kind of your typical palate cleanser thriller. If you're looking for something to just like listen to, that's a good one. Next was The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. Where's that big old book? Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. Great book. It was absolutely too long. My whole problem with this book, it was too long. Which I get it. It's kind of metaphorical because Addie LaRue is a woman who cannot die and she's lived a very, very long life. And so of course the book has to be long to kind of signify that and like make us feel like, wow, this feels long because like her life feels long. But it was just still too long, so no. Gave that one a 3 stars. But the dialogue in that book and some of the things that are said in that book are so good. Yeah. Next was When I Think of You by Maya Ariel. This was cute. Just a little palate cleanser romance. It was not super smutty. It was not super like, you know, the problems that I have with some of these other books, this one didn't have as much of it because it was real push or pull, slow burn. It took a while for us to get to them being in love, and so I like that about this book. And it was going somewhere. I gave it 4 stars. I enjoyed it. Next was The Kiss Countdown by Etta Easton. I enjoyed this book so much more than I thought I would. I don't know why I like this book. Maybe because it was taking place in Houston. I live in Houston, and I felt the Houstonness of this book. But yeah, I really enjoyed this book, and I hate fake dating. This has fake dating in it. It does have a broke female main character, which is one of my favorites. I love a broke female character. And her rich man, he wasn't super rich, but he was way more well off than she was, and he definitely helped my girl out. So I enjoyed that part of this book. I gave it 4 stars. Next, we had Curvy Girl Summer. The girls were going crazy over this book, and I really thought I was gonna like it. First of all, this cover, these colors, beautiful. Did not enjoy this book. I thought that this book was strange. I thought that this book was written by AI. I thought that the book didn't feel like it was written by a person of color. The jokes that were made in this book felt not like young person of color jokes. And therefore, I did not enjoy this book. Like, I literally to this day think that this book was written by AI, or at least partially written by AI. And I didn't think it was funny. I didn't think it was romantic comedy. I thought that the family, to say that this was a book about curvy girls, the family dialogue was so unnecessary and nasty. Didn't like it. Didn't like it. I gave it 2 stars. Next, I read Between Friends and Lovers, which was a love triangle book, which I'm not really into love triangle books, but this one was okay. My biggest gripe with this book was that the main male character was like a shell of a human. Like, I still to this day don't know anything about this man's personality. And the main female character, she needed therapy. She did not need a man, she needed therapy. So yeah, I think I gave that 3 stars. Oh, I gave it 2 stars. I was mean. I was strict. Looking back, this was 3 stars. It was not that bad. I was strict at the time, apparently. Next, I read The Secret World of Maggie Gray by Granger. This is a fantasy. It's kind of like Harry Potter, but HBCU style. Beautiful book, fun book. She needs an editor badly, but it was a great book. I gave it a 5 star. I had fun. I laughed out loud with this book. I laughed out loud. I talked to the book. Like, I was reading this book and I was like, ha ha, this, like, as if I'm not in the room by myself reading a book. Yeah, that's how good that book is. Next, I read Pardon My Frenchie by Farrah Roshan. I love that book. Again, laughed out loud. Pudding, I still remember Pudding. Like, and I don't usually remember a lot about books, but I remember having the time. I laughed. There is something so funny about like people who aren't dog people having to deal with dogs or like animals in general. It's just always so funny to me. I thought that book was so fun and like romantic rom-com. I enjoyed myself. I was literally in the gym listening to this book on audiobook because I could not put the book down. Loved it. I think I gave it 4 stars. Yep, 4 stars. Solid. Next was And Then Life Was Beautiful by Asia Monique. I had to read this book because it was a part of my book club. This was probably my worst book of the year. This book had no plot, no anything, lots of smut from the beginning, very weird pregnancy tropes, very weird trauma that was kind of unnecessary to the story. It was just, this book was not fun. No. Gave it 1 star. Least favorite book of the year. Next was They Dream in Gold by Mai Sanar. Enjoyed this book well enough, but there was just the timeline jumping made this book so hard to like truly get into, and that was it. It felt like a lot of characters at times. It felt like a lot of like timeline jumping at times, and that was my biggest issue with that book. But other than that, it was great. I would read her next books. This was her debut, so yeah, there were some kinks to work out, but I liked the music element, the historical fiction element. Like, this had everything in a book that I would enjoy. And I loved the culture, the Senegalese culture being weaved in. I thought the book was overall a really good fiction book. Next, I read a novel Christmas by Charity Shane. Weird smut. Weird smut. Yeah. Let's leave it where it is. 2 stars. And I was like in a Christmas mood, but that was it was not good. Next, I read Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. Solid 3 stars. The beginning of this book was good. The beginning of this book, I thought this book was going to be a 5-star. We get to the end and she could not stand on business. I hate in fantasy books when the girlie is trying to save the world, or she's trying to save her family, or she's trying to do something big, and she meets her main male character and all that gets thrown out the window. And that's exactly what she did. I'm sorry. I hope I'm not spoiling anything. I'm really not spoiling anything, but let's just say she didn't stand on business, and it made the book it watered the book down. I was like, for a first book in a fantasy series, you gonna go this far in? I won't be reading book number 2 to that one. And it's big, and I'm like, girl, you're not, no. After that, I read The Professor by Lauren Nazet, which was a thriller, but it wasn't very thrilling. It was actually quite boring. I just happened to be in a good mood at the time, and the book wasn't that bad to me, so I gave it a 3 stars. Then I read Legendborn. I almost DNF'd this book at the beginning of the year. It took me literally until the end to finish it, but I'm so happy I did. I'm so happy I did. Again, trials. Trials are so painful to me for some reason. They just feel like the story stops and it feels like we're just doing the same things over and over and over again. And I'm like, let's move on. And so these trials did take a long time. But the end, oh my God. Like, we just went 0 to 100 at the end of this book. And it was like, okay, girl, now I'm gonna read the second one. I think it's called Bloodmarked. I will read the second one. Bree is a cute main female character in a fantasy. I love this girl. I love her. She is just, I just love her. She beats to the, like, she literally, do mama need therapy? Yeah, she needs therapy. But she wears it well. She wears her trauma well. I think she's just so adorable. Like, I loved a lot about this book. This is my type of fantasy, but like I said, trials threw me off. If this book didn't have trials, this would have easily been a 5-star for me, but the trials really weighed the story down for me. But I will be reading the next 2 books in the series next year, because I believe the 3rd one comes out next year. So I'll be on that. And then my 40th book will be the second book to the Maggie Granger series. It's called The First Family. I have like 100 pages left in it, and it's my book club pick for this month. And yeah, I'm very excited. So yeah, I read 40 books. Like I said, I did not like a lot of these books because I was just blindly taking suggestions from social media, which I will not be doing next year. And I'm actually I want to do like reading vlogs, and I'm going to start off with some like fantasy books that I want to get into. I'm definitely going to go to Kindred bookstores here in Houston and just like find some really just like my type of books, and I'll be focusing on that. So hope you guys liked my reading wrap up overall, and you know, if you've read some of these books, if you like them, if you don't like them, let me know. So thank you. Bye.